Let's talk about the Supreme Court and the case called Trump versus the United States. This is a case about Trump's claims of absolute immunity from criminal charges for official acts. In this case, we're talking about his attempt to overturn the 2020 election where he lost against Joe Biden, and he tried to stay in office against the will of the people. There's a lot going on related to this man right now, and it scares me that we are not appreciating how big of a deal this is. And I think it's because it's so much going on at once. Trump tried to steal the 2020 election and seize the presidency. So last year, a group of citizens and a grand jury reviewed the evidence and decided to indict him in August of 2023 on 4 counts. Now let's remember, he's the first of 45 presidents to be charged with a crime, and no other president before him ever made claims of immunity. But Trump responded to this indictment by claiming that no president can be prosecuted for official acts and that a former president cannot be charged unless the House of Representatives impeaches him and then the Senate convicts him. So if you remember, the House of Representatives did impeach Trump for trying to overturn the election, but the Senate did not convict him because many senators were honestly afraid for their lives and their safety and the safety of their families. And also, they were convinced this man was going to just disappear and go away once Joe Biden took over, and they wouldn't have to worry about him again, and that justice was going to take care of him. Yet here we are. And I think it's important to mention a few things about the Supreme Court that is reviewing this case. Let's start with this man, Justice Clarence Thomas. His wife was directly involved in the attempt to overturn the election, yet he didn't recuse himself. And we can't forget about these 2 other judges, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, because many of us, including myself, would argue that they're illegitimate judges. And let me explain why. In 2016, this judge, Scalia, was in the Supreme Court, and he died in February. Obama was then president and nominated Merrick Garland, the one who is now leading the Justice Department, as the person to replace him. But Mitch McConnell was the majority leader in the Senate, and he said, no, we're going to make a rule, and no Supreme Court justice can be seated in an election year. Even though we're talking about somebody who died in February, a replacement was nominated in March for an election in November. What happened? Trump won, and then he nominated and got Neil Gorsuch as the Supreme Court justice. Fast forward to 2020. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies in September of 2020. By the time she died, some states were already doing early voting for an election less than 2 months away. So you would think that the same rules apply from when Merrick Garland was supposed to be seated in the Supreme Court. Oh no. Again, Mitch McConnell is leader in the Senate, and he decides to speed up the process and put this woman in the Supreme Court. That's just an important side note that we need to keep in mind. So back to our immunity case before the Supreme Court, where now you understand a little bit more about some of the judges that are making this decision. What did we hear during the oral arguments? On the one hand, we have the liberal judges, there's 3 of them, who are laser focused on the gravity of the situation before them. And Justice Jackson put it this way: if we say that the president is above the law and can basically commit any crimes without consequences, how do we stop the Oval Office from becoming criminal headquarters? So these liberal judges understood that this case goes to the heart of our democracy. But then, in this same hearing, we had the conservative judges who were more concerned about hypothetical situations and not the one that we have in front of us with tons of evidence. Justice Gorsuch, the one I told you about that shouldn't actually be there, said that he's not worried about Trump, but he is worried about unfair prosecutions targeting future presidents. Now, Justice Samuel Alito actually tried to flip the script and said that if you granted immunity to the president, they would be more likely to leave office knowing that they couldn't be prosecuted. It was bizarre. So these conservative judges were obsessing over imaginary scenarios instead of holding Trump accountable for trying to steal an election and stay in the White House, despite the election results. There was one law professor who put it plainly. These judges see student debt forgiveness as tyranny, but they turn a blind eye to an actual coup attempt. So at the end of the day, these conservative judges made it very clear. They care more about speculative scenarios benefiting their side than confronting the present-day reality of Trump's crimes. They kind of forgot that it's their duty to uphold the rule of law without fear or favor. And honestly, it should scare anyone who believes that nobody is above the law, not even a president. So the problem here is that the decision of the Supreme Court is probably going to take weeks, so we will have no definition around this before the 2024 election. The founders of this country had the revolutionary idea that no one, not even the president, was above the law. This was a total break from the old world ideas that a monarch could do anything they wanted. But now, Donald Trump is basically saying, those rules don't apply to me. He claims he needs complete and total immunity as president from acts that crossed the line. But here's the thing. As much as Trump wants to play the victim card here, the vast majority of the people in this country are not buying it. They understand that his immunity claims are just a guilty man throwing a tantrum and doing everything he can to escape accountability for what he did. This isn't about partisan politics. This is about a moral principle where people from all over agree. Our leaders must follow the same rules as everyone else. Trump's trials should end before November 2024, so voters have all the information they need. But the Supreme Court is delaying justice by doing everything they can to delay.